And Saba, my good friend, invited me to this incredible event today. I'm really impressed by, the creativity and the innovativeness that Saba has shown by bringing us together. So we know that Saba has turned her research, her dissertation, into a documentary, and so today we're going to learn about it. I'm super excited to learn from her and to learn from all of you. We're going to have some Q&A and yeah, let's get it kicked off. So Saba, I'd love to hear a little bit about you, and I'd love to sort of understand more about why you're doing this. So you recently resigned from Apple and you launched Designing Schools, and the podcast that you've been running and the documentary have been a huge passion for you. So how does this all feel?
Yeah, overwhelming. But I'm so happy, like just seeing everybody here. It's so funny. My nephew just turned 3 in December, and it was sort of like, he's 3 years old. So it's like the first birthday I feel like he really understands. And as he was opening, all of his presents, and they live in London, so he's got a little British accent. With each present and with each rip, he would be like, "Oh my goodness." And literally right now, that's like all I hear in my head is just like, "Oh my goodness." Like, I just can't believe like how, at a time when I know we have so many other things we could be doing, that you all have joined us here today for this conversation. And so I know usually like thank yous and credits come at the end, but I really wanted to begin today because I think it's really in line with our theme for what we're going to be talking about, by recognizing two individuals who I feel like, had they not been a part of my life, perhaps we would not be here today in the way that we are. And the first one I really want to mention is Bruce Barron. And Bruce was my professor in my UCI credential program. He was sort of the social science methods teacher. And he was also an incredibly beloved middle school principal. But as the years, kind of passed after school, he became an incredible mentor and friend. And when I look back now, what I really appreciate the most about Bruce as a teacher, as a mentor, as a coach, is that I feel like he saw things in me that I didn't even know were there. And I think it's one of the greatest gifts that a teacher gives a student, is that ability to see themselves in a way that they don't see themselves. And the second person I want to thank who's here with us today is Devin Vidijka. I've only recently come to know Devin. It's really like been maybe 2 years. But he's one of the few people who actually read the entire dissertation. But that's not what I found special. What I found so special was that Devin read the dissertation and then sent me an email with so many notes. And I was like, wow, he really read this. But the line in the email that really resonated and was so special and really was something in the back of my head till this day is he said, "This is great. What are you going to do with it?" And I think that's another really beautiful gift that a teacher, a mentor, a coach gives you, is that bias toward action. This is an idea you have. This is something you're interested in. This is a passion you have. How are you going to move forward with that? And how does that person support you along that way? And, I think it's those types of conversations and relationships that we know are so important in education and that really make sort of that difference in what it is you do. And so relationships is really our theme today. When we think about, if I was to take all the research and somebody was to say, what's the one big takeaway? It would be exactly that: research. When people at Design 39 were asked, what do you feel makes you successful? It was the question to which there was a unanimous answer, and that answer was people. And so again, just want to thank all the people who joined us here today for this conversation.
That's awesome. And, I think that resonates with a lot of the folks that are here. They're expressing all of their love and their memories of folks that have impacted them. So tell me a little bit about this, dissertation and why you went back to school in the first place.
Yeah. So in 2017, I had made the transition from, I used to be a social studies teacher and started doing a lot of, one-to-one initiatives with schools. And I was at USC, and in 2017, I joined Apple. And I found myself becoming more and more curious about, was I doing the right work? Was I asking the right questions? It just felt like such a heavy responsibility to be the person who was talking with schools and with leaders about what change should look like and what we should be doing, that I just became really curious about, well, what is it like to be a learner on the other side? So that was sort of the first part of why I wanted to go back to school. And the second part was, ever since the day I walked into Design 39 and I learned about them in 2015, as a teacher, it struck such a chord that I knew it was a story I wanted to tell, but I wanted to tell it through the lens of research, and I wanted that support. And so, we spend so much time talking about why things need to change, whether it's citing the World Economic Forum or all these different things, those buzzwords that, we hear all the time that we've, grown tired of. But I think the piece that was missing, at least for me, was how. And not just like, oh, like design thinking or project-based learning, but really getting into the nuances. How do you really get below those layers and really scaffold that change and those conversations? And so that's the thing that I really wanted to get into. USC was an incredible experience. I look at specifically within the research, what made the teachers at Design 39 successful, because here's a group of people really challenging a lot of the things that many people believe you can't challenge and that you can't change. And so what I liked about USC, and this is that research lens I was looking for, we used a framework from Clark and Estes, from research to results. That's kind of the one they used. But one of the things that I really liked about it, it said, when you're an organization, what is the goal that you have for what you want to change? And once you have this goal, you need to look at the individuals within your organization and see, okay, well, what are the things that we need them to do so that we can reach this organizational goal? But it's not enough to just ask people to do things. We have to look at what are the gaps that exist in 3 areas. And this is what I think I enjoyed learning about the most, was we have to look at gaps in knowledge, motivation, and organization. And I think a lot of times when we look at change in school, we only look at one of those lenses. And I think, professional development would be a great example. We're going to start a one-to-one iPad program. We're going to launch a new ELA curriculum. And a lot of times we're only focusing on the knowledge. Let me teach you the app. And we fail to acknowledge, well, what about the motivation? Why are people going to be intrinsically motivated to join us in this change? As an organization, how are we supporting the people within here? Are we making the time and space for them to experiment, for them to learn, or are we simply expecting them to do this all in their own time? And so being able to look at the research and change through those 3 lenses, I found to be really, really valuable.
Awesome. I'm actually getting a request right now to turn on the captions, but I actually can't find that option in mine. Saba, can you find it in yours? If you go on the More button on the bottom right-hand corner, do you see an option that says turn on captions?
I do not.
I don't see it either. If anybody knows how to do it, maybe you can send me a message. Okay, so you talked a lot about Design 39. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I would love to. So, and I want to say, I hope Design 39 is the first of many stories that I have the opportunity to tell. But in 2015, I had 2 very serendipitous moments that happened just within a few months apart of each other. And the first one was a quote that I had heard from Eric Brynjolfsson. And he said, "Technology is not destiny. We shape our destiny." And, he really emphasizes, that we have to think about, now that we have these machines, what can humans now open the door to being able to do that we couldn't do before? And so, you hear a quote like that and your question kind of is like, okay, well, how do I shape my destiny? Like, how do we go about doing this? And not only how do I do it, how do we help other people do this too? And so that question really kind of just like lingered in the back of my head. And in 2015, I also went to Ed Camp San Diego. And at Ed Camp San Diego, I sat in a session with Stacy, who's here today, and Kelly Evelath, and they were 2 teachers, from this Design 39 school, talking about how they were using design thinking with their 1st and 2nd graders. And once I learned about design thinking, and especially that empathy component, it was like so many of the missing pieces that I had been thinking about fell into place. But it was almost like, wow, this is the answer to how we shape our destiny, right? Like really leaning in with that empathy lens. But what really, really struck me about what they were sharing in the session was that they didn't do an overhaul of the entire curriculum. They didn't say we threw out standards and we threw out all of these things. It was a very simple reframing of questions. Definitely not simple work by any means. But when I was watching it, I was like, wow, that's really something that we could all do. And so, I remember I got on a phone call with Stacy after, and I was at USC at that time. So I was working in higher ed, they were working in elementary, yet we were able to have this incredible collaboration and learning with one another that really taught me one of the greatest lessons that, it's on the back of my wall. And, I share it all the time. And that's that idea that, like Eric says, it's technology is not destiny. Those cultures of innovation begin with a culture of empathy. And that's really the statement that I wanted to validate through research with Design 39. So it's sort of like a very nice full circle moment for us.
That's awesome. And I think that reinforces what you said earlier about motivation being one of the things that people often leave out as the factors why, initiatives don't work. So Saba, we are actually 1 minute over time. Should we talk a little bit more about the experiments that you were actually engaging in when you were a learner, or should we move on to the trailer?
No, I think we're good because it goes right into that.
Okay.
So like, I shared earlier, and thank you. So I love Preeti. She's like totally going to keep us like on track. But one of the things that I loved about going back to school, like I said, was experimenting with being a learner. And so one of the things that many of you have supported and, followed has been the podcast. That was the first one. But the one that we're really excited to share with you today is the trailer for the documentary that will be coming, fully launching in May. And like I said, it really was an opportunity to be able to go back and to be able to look at how do you take these traditional assignments in school and personalize them for yourself without it being an assignment for you. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody and share our trailer. And, we're excited to hear what you think. And I also, I sort of say this as well, like, when I used to teach history, I used to say that, the only way we learn is really when we challenge each other's thinking. I used to start the course with, the quote, I think Voltaire, I detest what you say, but I'll defend to death your right to say it. And so, we really invite critical feedback. Like I said, the documentary is still a work in progress. There's a lot of room for change and growth. And so we'd love to, like I said, hear both the things you enjoy and also the areas in which you think we can improve. So with that, here we go.
We know why schools need to change. We just don't always know how. And creating change, it's hard.
These questions start to bubble up. There's that vulnerability where we're like, we don't know.
So it's that culture of vulnerability and just being able to go, you know what, I messed up and let's try it again.
44% of executives say that incoming graduates do not have the skills they need to be successful.
Just, we ask them, when you're looking for a new hire, what do you look for? We want to know.
It's not about Mother May I. It's like, what's the great idea? Let's make it happen.
They're like creativity, collaboration, please, collaboration.
We're all great at something, but we can't be great at everything. And I remember being a teacher and walking into Design 39 and thinking, I wish I was able to work in an environment like this. And so I think the question we have to ask is, how do we move away from these traditional structures that are keeping both people and learning in isolation? California, a place calling out to those in search of new opportunities, those who want to reinvent themselves. It's a place that offers you the personal liberation to be something or do something.
I never heard of design thinking before I got here.
I see how we implement it, not just through curriculum, but I think when socially kids are having problems, instead of just focusing on what's your problem, what are you going to do about it?
Design thinking is more of a mindset than a skill.
However, like Eric reminds us, technology doesn't shape our destiny, we shape our destiny. And if indeed we have the power to shape our destiny, what are the skills and mindsets we need to be successful? How will we learn them, and who's going to prepare us? To explore this very question, I welcome you to Design 39.
We want to be able to answer those questions in a simple statement. So we have life-ready thought leaders elevating humanity.
It's not about learning the stuff. It's about becoming a learner. And once you become a learner and you understand how to be a learner, then the world is yours and you can do anything.
Half the time they don't even think they're learning anything.
Yeah.
They think they're just having a great time and solving problems and helping other people. And for that to be cool, how amazing is that?
That was so inspiring, Saba. I am so excited to see the actual documentary. Super, super cool. So we would love to engage you all in a little bit of Q&A based on this trailer. You know, what's holding us back from changing grammar of school? What is holding us back from really implementing, you know, these impactful movements that we want to implement in school? So if you have questions about the documentary, about Saba's work, if you could drop them in the chat. And I'm going to actually ask a question of my own to Saba. And while she's answering that, I'll monitor the chat to see if there are other questions, and then I'll just keep asking them. So let me make sure that you're pinned. Okay, you're good. So Saba, so it's interesting that you have, you know, created this really, you know, fascinating perspective of how design thinking is operating in schools. What do you think is different for students in terms of graduating today versus graduating, let's say, you know, maybe when you graduated? What is the difference? And then how was it different for you to have graduated in 2020 versus in 2017? Sorry, 2007.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to put it in one word, as cliche as it might sound, it's agency. I think, you know, as a student, you have so much more power today with the tools and the platforms that you have available to you that you don't necessarily, like, honestly, this was the biggest lesson I learned, and I hope it's a huge takeaway for people here today. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves in schools to try to be things that I don't think we can ever be. Like, I always use the example of my sisters. I will never be as savvy with technology as my younger sisters are. And they're only a few years younger than me, but I just won't be. It's a different generation. It's a different language. But I think we all have a different skill set and a strength that we bring to the table. And when I think about my own experience as a learner, that was the nuance I really left with, was I didn't need my teachers to assign me GarageBand projects and iMovie projects and all these other types of things. I needed my teachers to challenge my thinking, to help me ask better questions, to help me see those strengths, just like those stories I shared with you earlier, to see my strengths, to see my interests, and be my coach in being able to help actualize those ideas, those dreams, and those things that I wanted to be able to do. And so I think, again, it goes back to that relationship piece is really the biggest one, I would say. And, you know, I would say that agency is to me where the equity divide lies. There are some people that get those opportunities and there are some people that don't. And, you know, I always think back to that quote from William Gibson, the future is here. It just isn't evenly distributed. And so the question is, you know, as schools, how do we allow our teachers to become coaches more than that constant pressure of trying to learn those new apps and learn that new technology? There's definitely a place for it, but I would say by making that the focus, as we so often do, we neglect a lot of the really important components that can help us move the needle forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Related to that, there's a question from Snehal. And it's a very practical question that I think all of educators have to deal with, which is how do we phase out the testing, high stakes, testing, and convince traditional educators to engage in design thinking?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to write that one down, and I'm going to let the learning experience designers speak to that one, because I think, that they have a powerful example and they will do it justice more so than I will, but I'm writing it down right now.
Okay, awesome. Here's another question from Denise. For the teachers at Design 39, I guess we'll ask this question, but maybe we can just flag this for now. What were your greatest challenges, and what is the greatest joy in teaching there, and how have you adapted during the pandemic?
Yeah, totally. I think let's definitely note these questions. And just so everybody knows, we're going to hear next from Joe and Megan from a principal's perspective, and then we're going to move into the learning experience designers to hear from their perspective, and then we're going to move into two parents who have joined us today to hear from their perspective. So everybody will have a chance to kind of ask those questions to the people who are directly doing the work.
Awesome. And then Gareth is asking, have you worked with the Right Question Institute?
I have not.
Okay, so maybe Gareth, you can post some information about that. Michael's question, what type of guidance training does D39 campus provide for its building administrators, leaders to develop and support classroom educators on design thinking model? Is that another question for Joe?
That's probably a question for Joe. Yeah, we can
go. Let's see. A lot of folks saying how inspiring this video was, how excited they're to watch the rest of it. Where do parents and grandparents fit into the design thinking relationship with kids?
Yeah, I'm so excited for our two parents who are here today. Like I said, I don't want to take away from anybody else. And I feel like the people who are here will do justice to those answers for you all way more than I would be able to. I always say I'm just kind of like a catalyst for being able to bring people together so that people can directly ask people who are in those roles, how are you doing this work? And so, yeah, I think with that, maybe we will move to our next segment.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the questions in here are mostly encouragement. There's one person, Laura, who wants you to come to the UK. So I think everyone's just really excited about your work. So maybe it's time to actually move on to Joe and Megan. I'd be happy to introduce them. So Joe is a senior vice president of education at Thrively and the former principal at Design 39. And Megan is a parent and co-founder of Design 39, and 6 months ago became principal at Mission Estancia Elementary. So I'll pass the mic to Joe and Megan.
Awesome to have you. Let me set a little bit of context first, Megan, then, if that's okay. I'm going to do a little thought experiment. Saba, it's always an invitation, right? So it's about perspective taking. Saba, would you like to join me? I know you're a learner. Are you willing to take a chance?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. So go ahead and describe what you see here.
A box.
Okay, what else?
Food. I haven't had lunch, so all this cheese is just like.
Okay. Keep going.
Colors, dimension, the red that's sort of there.
You're so brave and vulnerable. I love this. We haven't even practiced this. This is fantastic. And do you know what I'm looking at?
What are you looking at?
What do you know? I take a guess.
The ingredients, how bad these are for you.
Maybe. So here's the thing, right? It's all perspective taking. We can only see what we can see. You could try to look it around it, but ultimately, no, there was no ingredients on it. But we're thinking we're looking at the same thing, right? That's the point. That's the thing with language too, right? The language that we use, we think we're using the same language now. So that's why you have to have multiple perspectives. And so I want to start with one picture. This is in a design studio in the bottom with our 2-3. This is it. Read that. Changing one word changes everything. Literally changing one word changes everything. And so my whole perspective in this really is around changing one word, which is for to with, designing with, collaborating, connecting everybody together. So that's my first bit. So I'm going to pause there. And I know, Megan, you have some insights to kind of set some context.
Yeah, and that reminds me too, when we were creating Design 39 campus, right? And in our first year, we kept saying, changing the way students experience learning. And we quickly realized that it wasn't about changing the way students experience learning. It was about changing the way we experience learning. So again, crossing off that just students and changing it to that one word change makes a huge difference, because it really is a culture of learners. and everyone sees themselves as a learner there. And that's huge because of that design thinking process, and really looking at things from a different lens.
So I'm also timekeeper, so we have 7 minutes. So it's just storytelling around some of the elements about this piece. And so Megan, I know this is really fantastic because you went from LED, learning experience designer, to now going into the classroom. I'm going to show a few quick pictures, because how do you know if you're designing with or if you're designing for? Okay, so how do you know that? So I'm going to show some pictures, and so to help you kind of engage with me in this. So we saw this first one, right? So you know real quickly if you're designing for or designing with by who's holding the microphone and who's holding the pen. So these are parents, right? So parents doing the design work. Next picture. Who's holding the pen? Who's holding the clipboard? This is one of our design challenges for hiring. This is a student inside of the hiring, right? Who's holding the pen? Who's doing the writing? These are all staff inside of our welcome center, right? Who's holding the pen? Literally, who's holding the pen? Look, I'll zoom in. On a blank wall, right? Teachers. Who's holding the pen? Who's doing the work? Who's doing the talking? Kids, designing their own promotion. Literally, who's holding the pen? Kids, being the teachers. Now, you can do this now. These are a group of kids that are coming from all over a different space. So 100 miles away from Design 39, sophomores and seniors and juniors. And then again, who's holding the pen? What if high school was a place where? I can tell you, when you do this, it's magic. And so here's another context, another school. This is minute 5. Take a look at the body language of the kids. Yeah, dude, whatever you want. Okay, is he still going to talk to me? What's on my shoe? I don't know. Is he done talking yet? Right? What do you think minute 6 looks like? I'll show you. Who's holding the pen? Okay, change in face, change in direction, change in everything. And this is how they leave when you do that. Over and over again. So that's just a little bit of context about, do you know if you're designing with or if you're designing for? Because you're going to have a massive bias if you're doing it for someone. So that's the context. The future is the place, capital W, capital E, we create. Perspective, right? Because you're looking at something, you think we're looking at the same thing. So Megan, I walked with you in your school 3 months ago. You're 3 months into it, I think, of the school in a pandemic. And I walk around your school with you in front of you, and I asked the teachers, what's different? And they said, each teacher, she listens to us. So Megan, I know a little bit of context. 4 minutes for you. What would you say is your first step that you took there? And what was it something that you took away from Design 39 that was the magic?
Yeah, absolutely. With design thinking, right? It's that way of thinking. It's that mindset. And really going in and empathizing and really listening to students, to staff, to the community, building those relationships. And working together to actually design around needs and identifying those needs and really empowering my staff, my students, and my community to have a say, right? So really going through that design thinking process, really trying to teach them that even though we're in a pandemic right now and we have challenges, the way that we can tackle those challenges is through using that design thinking process. So for example, report cards, right? Coming around report cards, that's always a challenging time for teachers. It takes a lot of time. So we went through the design thinking process, empathized with the teachers, went and researched to see if there's ever been any supports or what's been done, what other schools and other places have done. And then we went through the design thinking process and prototyped and actually implemented a time. We came back right first week in January after break, staffing issues galore, if you could just imagine juggling all the pieces around. But we made it work that every one of my staff members, every one of my classroom teachers had a full day out to work on report cards. They didn't have to do any subplans. It didn't cost us a penny in anything. It was really looking at our resources and creating this amazing experience for our students, back to school, back to nature. But really just showing our community and our students, our staff, that we can identify those needs and listen and go through that design thinking process to make change no matter what's going on. In fact, today I was just working with staff members all day. I had a small group out and we just went through the design thinking process, looking at ways we can change. What small things can we do to make a big impact? And we came up with a big thing and big changes. And we went through the entire design process and got to the resources. And we realized, who's not in the room that should be in the room. So we paused there and made a list of who also needs to be brought into this design, this prototype that we were coming up with, that will really change and shift some of the culture happening at our campus and give students opportunity for choice and voice, and really to expand their knowledge pieces and their experience and exposure to things. So yeah, no matter what, coming in, pandemic and other different situations happening, staffing, really using that design thinking process, and as a leader, really listening to our community and empowering students and staff to voice and to advocate. I had one staff member said, I'm not a part of that today and I want to be a part of it. And guess what we did? We made it so that she can be there today. And she was with us during the day today to go through that design process to try and build some change in our school. So yeah, just a few examples, Joe, of taking some of those skills that, Design 39 was created using the design thinking process. So taking that and bringing it into other, more traditional settings and, expanding what we're doing.
I think we have 2 more minutes. I want to show just that context when we can talk to the learning experience designers. So it's the funniest thing, right? So I was at the design school, so D school in Stanford. And so they were hosting a $4,000 conference. And I go back to school in a first grade classroom, and here's the design thinking methodology. And what do I see in a first grade classroom? Design thinking, right? So that's the magic. That's the magic. Because what are they doing? They're doing it for a purpose, because they wanted to empathize and they wanted to create a toy challenge that says, like, these are really great educational toys, right? In first grade, right? So you can pay $4,000, or you can go to your school and say, let's start some of this design work. The bit here that we really want you to think about is there were some significant changes. Like we had to say, what's our identity? Like at the heart of what we do, right, are some of these things, these guiding principles, design thinking being at one of those centers, right? But then it's always this question: what do you want your students to value 5 years from now? Ask that question to yourself real quick. And that's that picture that I showed you with the parents. And we did this multiple times, and they're saying, like, what do we want our kids to value? And I can tell you, not one time did the parents ever say, I want awesome test takers. Of course, they have to read, write, and do mathematics and articulate their message clearly, but what do they want? Empathetic kids who are respectful, who are creative, who are happy. Sounds like the things we hire for right now. So I think what we really are getting to is that these shifts started at the very beginning of the school. There are some massive shifts that have to happen in the parents, in the teachers, in the administration, in the district, in the ecosystem, all of it, right? And so you have to remember, if you try to design a habitat for a frog in a desert, it's not going to work too well. So each of your ecosystems is different. So you have to look at, like, how is it inside of your space going to make that happen? Now, that's not going to happen because of one person. Leadership matters, no doubt, but this is a people business and people powered. And I can't tell you, I've never been with a more amazing group, and I get tears every time I think about not being with them on the daily. And that's our learning experience designers. Absolutely. And that's kind of that transition. So love y'all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, what I hear there so much is sort of that idea of, yes, here's a problem, but how might we? And I think that's one of those mindsets from the design thinking process, the two that I always think have such a beautiful relationship, that optimism that's there for how might we, but also that creative confidence, that belief in ourselves that yes, we can think about how to do something in a bit of a different way. And so, I think we will now come into the learning experience designers, because I think a lot of people have questions for both of you all. So I think we'll go learning experience designers, hear a little bit from the parents, and then I've made notes of all the different questions that are coming through in chat. So if you have more questions, let us know, and then we'll direct them to the right people. But we have a really phenomenal group of learning experience designers here. We have Christina, we have Julie, we have Lauren, we have Jody, we have Stacy, we have Jacqueline, we have Cami, we have Julie. I know I'm probably missing some names because we have so many people here, but welcome everybody. And, I think it would be really nice for us to maybe just sort of start with, let's just get this question out of the way, because I know it comes up all the time, this one around testing. Do you have to, are they mutually exclusive? Let's kind of phrase it that way. Is high stakes testing and design thinking, the work you're doing, mutually exclusive?
Hey, Lam, process-based learning. It's not PBL, process-based learning, Lam.
True. Saba, repeat your question again. Just as you were talking, my partner came in and left and distracted me for a moment.
That's totally fine. There was a question in the chat that as somebody asked around this idea of high stakes testing. So, do you have to get rid or phase out high stakes testing before you can start doing design thinking? Do you see them as mutually exclusive at Design 39?
Unfortunately, a lot of that high stakes testing, what you're referring to, we can't phase out. There's a lot of testing we have to do, but it's what you do with the testing, or your mindset about the testing is what makes a difference. So we're not looking at the end game. We're looking at the process of learning at our school. We're looking at the process of moving ahead and gaining what we need at Design 39. So the test will come, and we believe that, Common Core is our floor, and we can go up from there. So we test the standards. We teach the standards through all sorts of experiences. Our kids are able to attach their learning to the real world, but we focus on that process. What are they getting along the way? What experiences are they going through to learn the content, not just where we are going at the end, because Saba, sometimes we don't know. Julie, did you want to add on to that? I see you nodding.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That we're not going to get away from the testing, and I'm going to add in the word yet, which has become our power word around here, because it gives us hope that maybe eventually we will. But as Stacy said, it's the process. Helping kids understand that what do you do when you don't know an answer is important. And instead of what are you going to be, what problems do you want to solve, so that you're connecting them to, real reality, and, giving them a purpose for their learning. And hopefully they'll gravitate towards what they're interested in, because we've maybe given them a little window into what is out there in the world and what kind of problems do they want to solve, so that they're not just learning to learn, but they're actually learning a process. And when they feel they can't do something, they say, wait a minute, I can freak out maybe at first, but I can go to my plan. What do I do when I don't know? I can design, I can ask questions, I know how to use resources. So it's really the process, being okay with not knowing, even as an LED. I think that's really important, to be vulnerable. And if someone asks you a question, you're like, you know what? I don't know, but maybe I can find out. Let's go look together. So I don't know. It's just, what do you do when you don't know? And then, having a passion for something.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So I think another question that people had is, and maybe, you know, we can contextualize this a little bit more. Somebody asked, what's the greatest joy you experience at Design 39? And then somebody asked, what's the greatest challenge? And so I think, you know, for people who are thinking about implementing this, what would you share would be your greatest joy and your greatest challenge? And Judy, maybe we can start with you, and then we'll kind of go around.
I was just thinking about things that happen on a daily basis, and Megan mentioned it earlier about just empowerment and seeing our learners as leaders, not just for themselves in their learning, but also being leaders for our entire space and other students in our spaces. And so seeing them lead the way. Joe mentioned having a pen in their hands, and you can see them with pens, but you can see them also with their voices, and you can see them directing and organizing without me. And that might seem really fearful sometimes, that somehow I don't have control. But as I watch them, I know where the design was that allowed them to feel free to pursue and lead in the way that we want to see them out in the world. And so for me, that is and gives me the most joy.
All right, how about Cami, the greatest challenge?
Every time I step foot on campus, like in the mornings, it almost feels like a dorm. You know how like when you walk into your hall and people's doors are wide open, and some people close their doors, but it really does feel like, I mean, true, there's COVID and that's why doors are open right now. But at the same time, I feel like every time I walk through, it's like, there's a lot of socializing happening where we are in our rooms, our learning spaces, but our doors are always wide open. One really cool thing that I want to talk about challenges, but I want to also talk about joy. And so one really cool thing that I have come to learn at Design 39 is our key can open any door, literally any door. And if we need something, it's very communal, where you may have, you know, Stacy has the Glowforge, which is the laser cutter, and we know that if we need something, Stacy's there to guide us through it. Or if we need something else, like there's always people to ask, and the answer is always yes. And one of the challenges, I would say, and as much as I would like to think that I'm an extrovert, I'm also very introverted, where I need to be in a cave. And having our doors wide open all the time could be problematic in my brain, but at the same time, it's a give and take. And so that's the challenge, where often I might need to be in a cave to decompress, process my thoughts, all the great ideas that I've heard. And so that I feel like that could be a challenge, but just knowing, reflecting on yourself as a learner as well, what do you need right now to be the most successful, and taking that space for yourself.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And like, that's the one thing I hear. It's the one thing, again, like I shared with, I felt as a teacher when I walked in and I met you all for the first time, is like that collaboration is so strong. It's not just that 1 hour a week in our PLC type thing, or, you know, those types of things that we usually see. It was like, wow, these people really help each other. These people really support each other. Why is that not the norm? Why is that the exception? And I would say that was the one thing that never really left my head as a teacher, you know, going in. It was the one thing I never had that I wish I did. And I wonder, you know, would I have stayed in the profession longer? You know, I still call myself a teacher, but I'm not actually like doing that type of work anymore. But I wonder, would my experience have been different had I had that environment? And I think as we look at the number of people that are thinking about quitting, the number of people that are frustrated with this profession, you know, if you listen to the llast podcast episode, you know, Nima Avashia highlights, if we don't have our best of the best coming into this profession, you know, what does that look like for the future for our students? And so I think if there's one takeaway, again, I would recommend for people here to think about, what is that small thing you can take back with you? How do you help people learn more about each other's strengths? You know, Joe's doing great work with that at Thrively. How do we let people learn more that you don't have to do this alone, right? In fact, we shouldn't even be asking people to do this work alone. And so that's sort of like, it's again, I think just the one theme I really wanted to highlight out there for us. So with that, I think, should we move on to our parents? And there's a lot of questions coming in. Eric actually just posed a really interesting one that I'm going to open to Joe online, but you might want to check with him offline as well. But then we'll open it up to the group as a whole to answer some of these other ones, because I think there's a bit of collective answer in some of these. So really excited to welcome, it was really interesting. Okay, speaking of like design thinking and experimenting as you go, I actually didn't consider asking parents. Like I was so fixated on teachers, I didn't even think about it. And I met these two incredible parents who said, you have no idea. I think it was Sai when I talked to you for the first time, it was like, you have no idea what a risk this was for us. And I thought, wow, like, and they were being so kind and generous and bringing together a great group of parents that we're going to interview and bring their voices in as well. But welcome to the both of you. A lot of people here, there was a question in the chat that I think we'll just start with. And that is, a lot of people feel that parents aren't supportive of these changes in school, and that you need that parent support to kind of make some of these changes. What made you choose this school, and what made you put your support, I guess, in this direction?
Sai, you want to start?
Sure. Hey, thanks, Abba. Appreciate it. I'll probably go quick. So Sainarayan, I'm a parent of two kids at Design. I've got now a fifth grader and a second grader. This is my fifth grader's been here since kinder. So quite frankly, Saba, if you were to ask me what caused me, what I did back then, it was pure faith. I'll be honest with you. There was a lot of faith going in, right? Because there is the fear of the unknown, honestly, my wife and I were looking at homeschooling our kids just because, my mom was a teacher all her life, 45 years, traditional education. I've been through that whole system. And I think one of the things that I walked out feeling was that I felt like school was being done to me over the years. And for some reason, I didn't want that experience for my kids. I felt like, we live in different times. When we go to work, we're constantly learning. There's development, there's learning, there's training, ongoing training, all that happening, even as adults today. And quite frankly, I kind of feel like I never grew up until I was 30. I think, probably, woke up one day and said, gosh, there's so much I need to learn in this world. And so I honestly didn't want that experience for my kids. I wanted my kids to have that experience of learning. And lo and behold, Google searching and looking at design thinking, I'd been introduced to design thinking through IDEO a few years ago, prior to that. And so I was like, what is out there outside of just, the traditional education model? Is there anything that I can do different to bring those experiences to my kids? And quite frankly, that's where I said, okay, we're going to go on a faith. My wife and I still remember that conversation we had the night before we made a house purchase down the street just so we could qualify to be in the neighborhood, to put our kids in a school like this. And we were like, are we doing the right thing? And honestly, I think my wife and I looked at each other, and said, it's just like design thinking. This is that first iteration. If it does not work, this is the right time to change. And so that was, honestly, it's on faith. And, I want to just touch upon the other question, probably before I give it to Bob, is where do parents fit in? I think parents fit in everywhere on campus. Parents fit in. We are a design campus. In fact, we changed our language. I think Joe mentioned it at the beginning. Our parent organization is called a collaborative. We don't have a traditional PTA and a traditional foundation on campus. We have one parent organization. It's called the collaborative because we collaborate. We design. We also learn design thinking. In fact, every year prior to COVID, I know we're going to have to kind of reinstate some of these things. In the last couple of years, we've developed some bad habits as parents too. We do have opportunities for parents to come in and learn design thinking, experience what their kids experience in the classroom. And I think those are elements that really fascinated me as a parent. Our parent community is phenomenal. There's a lot of them on this Zoom call that I'm looking at right now as we speak. And the beauty of it is everyone is involved. And so the joy of it, everyone is involved. I think the challenge of it, everyone is involved. And so sometimes perspective taking is really where it's at. So experience has been phenomenal. And the only thing I would say is this is the next iteration. I think we just iterate, just like design thinking, and build that next version moving forward. So, Bob?
Sure. Thank you, Sai. And Saba, thanks for having us. To echo a lot of things that Sai said, and we had our kids at I'll call it a traditional school down the road from Design 39. And to be candid, we just felt like our kids weren't getting what they needed. And my wife was volunteering quite a bit in the classroom, and she'd come home and she just had a bad feeling and said, yeah, I feel like the kids are not engaged, the teachers are not engaged. And so our kids aren't growing and developing and learning the way that they should. So she reached out to Joe. We came in. Joe was kind enough to meet with us. And he was very candid with us. He said, what are you looking for? What are you trying to accomplish for your kids? What do you want? And so we had a very candid conversation and realized that what was happening at Design 39 is exactly what we wanted for our kids. We wanted a different experience, and an experience where their curiosities could be challenged, their curiosities could be fulfilled, and so forth. So, and he took us on a tour, and we got a chance to go inside several classrooms. And I remember what really resonated with me is I saw kids doing what I do in my everyday professional life. I saw them getting up in public speaking. I saw them presenting ideas. I saw them articulating a point of view. I saw them having incredible soft skills that I look for when I interview people that I'm trying to hire, you know, for senior roles and things like that. And I was thinking to myself, man, I didn't figure this out until I was late into my career and I had gotten lots of bumps and bruises from getting knocked down and in my professional career and so forth. I said, what an incredible advantage this would be for my kids to learn it from elementary school and on. So I didn't learn design thinking till late in my career, in my 40s and well into my career. And my kids from first grade have learned design thinking, and they know how to do it and what it means and how to solve problems and so forth. So it's been an incredible journey. And I'll tell you, in year one, at the beginning, the first few months, we didn't know if we made the right decision. Like Sai said, we took a leap of faith. And we had put them into a program where they were in Lego League, which was an extracurricular activity. And we get together on Saturdays and we do a design challenge. And we're using design thinking in this extracurricular club on the weekends. And we went to Legoland, and the kids were, a gal comes by, one of the judges, and started asking questions about their design and their prototype that they built. Without missing a beat, my two kids, and we've got 10-year-old twins that are in fourth grade. I think they were in first grade or second grade at the time. Without missing a beat, they both jumped in and started to articulate and explain what they had designed, what they were solving for. So I looked at my wife, I said, see, sorry. Apologies, sorry to get emotional. Anyways.
It's personal, Bob. It's personal. I'm coming in for a hug. Here we come.
Thank you, Joe. So anyways, I turned to her, I go, see, this is why we made that decision. Look at what leaders they've become. Look at the fact that they jumped right in and they had agency, and, you know, a stranger and an adult, they jumped in and started to explain and articulate what they're solving for and what the design prototype was achieving. So I knew that day that we made the right decision, and it gets proven to me every day when I see their minds growing and expanding and how happy they are, the joys of learning and just the change and the spark that I see in my kids. So it's been a pleasure and an honor. And as Sai said, as a community, we're grounded in design thinking. When a challenge comes up, if something comes up that we're trying to solve for, as parents, as teachers, as a collaborative, we all leverage design thinking to go figure it out and solve it together. So it really is ingrained in everything we do.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, you know, and I think, again, that was such a big takeaway for us. Like, look how personal this type of change is to everyone. I think it goes back to what Joe shares about perspective, right? Like we always feel like somebody else doesn't want us to do something, but it's not until you open those doors and you lean in with that empathy lens and create that space for that conversation that you begin to realize like, wow, I'm actually not alone in this. Everybody wants to do this, you know, so we can, right? Maybe we haven't done it yet the way you all say, but like, you know, how do we get there? That question is sort of open. So thank you both for sharing. Joe, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, there's just a couple good things like, is it sustainable? Does it keep working? Relationships at the core. What happens about district? Is district involved? Of course, we have a board member here. I didn't ask her to come here. She's here today, Michelle. Awesome, right? It's just the way people, it's a we, it's a collective. It happens because all of us together. It's great. This is the beginning of a conversation. It's not the end, right, Saba? I know there's some questions about teacher training. I think this is just pretty darn fun. So I think I'm going to show this picture. Okay, ready? Project Beep Beep. I see smiles on our teachers' faces right now because they're like, oh my gosh, I love Project Beep Beep. Okay, think about teacher training. You stick in a room and it's someone's agenda. No, Project Beep Beep is what do you want to learn? We're gonna go see it. Because you ask your teachers, how many classrooms have you visited outside of your own? The high water mark is typically 2. How many places have you visited outside of your school? The high water mark is usually 0. So the whole idea is everybody gets access to things they typically don't see, because if you can't see it, you can't really believe it. So that you have to go outside of the world and go see it. So that means go to Intuit. Wherever you have industry, go to a school, go see the interesting things that are happening around you and be inspired with a lens of what's interesting and personal to you. So Project Beep Beep, start it yourself. You can steal the idea, go for it. So are we gonna end on a note of like a book coming up with this, Saba?
Go for it, Joe.
Yeah, Saba, do you have, so, you know, we're in the process and this is a passion project. So we have our transcript and we're going through the whole bits. And so I challenged Saba, I said, Saba, you have to pick one paragraph and you have to pull it out as an inspiration that it's about the conversation, how you can continue the conversation, because it's such a beautiful story to tell. And so there's multiple ways to tell that through video, through conversations, through books, through blogs. And so a book is coming, right, to be on the heels of this documentary. So Saba, you get to go first.
Yeah, and also just, you know, before we do that, I know some people have to leave. So I just want to say, you know, as a gift to everybody who joined us today for this conversation and made that time and space, when it is ready, you will receive a free copy. But I guess like the paragraph that I would pull out is really sort of this, it's a story about John Dewey and his successor, Charles Hubbard. And they talk about how in 1896, Dewey opened the lab school, where the mission was to create a school that could become a cooperative community while developing in individuals their own capacities. Furthermore, he imagined a curriculum that would engage students in real-world problems. Judd, on the other hand, believed the primary purpose was obedience. With the rise of industrialization in the late 1800s and a focus on manual training, Judd's views were more widely accepted and adopted. And I think, you know, 1800s, you know, and here we are again, faced with that very same, those two same competing views. And I think we have an opportunity to choose a different one. The question is, will we? And not even, you know, sort of will we, but how might we do that? And how do we move in that direction? And so I hope this is, like I said, the first of many examples that we're able to share. But Joe, what's yours?
Yeah, so I'll read from here. And again, Michelle O'Connor-Ratcliffe, thank you for being here. It's just fabulous to just see that district support. So this is ETEL. So ETEL, what? No, I didn't use a bad word. It's ETEL. So the thing is that you're going to go Google it and you're going to go look it up and you're not going to find anything. And that's awesome, because this is the process that we have that's kind of hiring differently, right? So we change the way we do school, we change the way we do business, which means we change everything, right? So what does that look like? So here is from a perspective of a learning experience designer. And because there's going to be multiple perspectives in this book to tell the book, right? Because then you can maybe hold it in your hand and see it, look at it from all these different angles: students, board members, superintendents, teachers, parents, administrator. And you might be able to get an idea of how you could do this yourself. So here's one. So the ETEL. I reached out to Brett Fitzpatrick, founding LED and previous teacher of mine, after seeing that he worked at Design 39. I wanted to reconnect and learn more about the school. On our phone call, I let him know that I received an invitation to do an e-tel, but I didn't know what that meant. I had Googled e-tel, and I didn't get any closer to figuring out what it was. Brett responded with something like this: I'm not going to tell you what it's about or what to include in your e-tel. Just be yourself, be brave, and be honest. That's all you can do. I'm the traditional school kid. I wanted to be told what page to turn to. I wanted to know how long the paper should be. I wanted to be given the details of what should be included in the project. That's my comfort zone. Give me the sandbox and I'm good to go. Total butterflies filled my body as I sat in front of my computer and pressed the send button for my e-tel. Was I enough? That's what we tell our friends all day long. You're enough, right? Just go be your most awesome self.
And that's what we'll do together. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We definitely promised you some resources, and we have a copy of this recording, so we will share all of that out with you. And like I said, we hope this is the beginning of a conversation between now, the documentary launch, and even after. So if you have questions or anything, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, especially with suggestions and feedback for things you would like to hear and that you would like to see moving forward. And thank you to the entire Design 39 team and community for really trusting me to share, what is a very, very, very special and beautiful story. So thank you so much to everybody. It was so great to have you here. Thank you.
And this is what we say, Saba. We don't say bye. I stole this. We just say bye for now.
Bye for now, everybody.